quick side note, encyclopedias are like Wikipedia in hardback, but you couldn't just change what was in it.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good twilight, good dawn. Welcome to another not so boring episode of Older Black Men Conversation. I'm one of your co-panelists, Brother David Harold Dudley III, aka Sweet Sunny D, aka Cool Breeze.
Are you done? Okay, only 2 aliases this week. Okay, hi, I'm the real Cliff Barnes, and sometimes known as Regular Man, but I'd like to welcome everybody to another episode of Old Black Man Conversation. I'm here with my friend.
Thank you, sir. I am Gary, your personal street philosopher. At one time, if you went to Franklin High School in Seattle, you would have known me as Sugar Bear. That's right, the cat's out of the bag now.
Can't get enough of sugar, Chris.
Sugar Chris.
Sugar.
Anyway.
Anyway, I digest. Digress. Anyway, and to my left is...
I'm Luther Lyle, also known as Sweet Lou.
Change tactics.
All right.
What do you like?
Sweet Sunny, Sweet Lou.
Okay, so anyway, in today's episode, we were just talking about how things have changed in the area that we live in, which is the Great Pacific Northwest city of Seattle. And were you the only one born here? Were you born here?
Yes.
Yeah, all the rest of
Cabrini
us.
Hospital. Yes.
All the rest of us
St. Francis
have,
Xavier.
yeah, all the rest of us, in a sense, were, well, transplants. You got here later in your life, and you and I got here about the same, like at elementary going into junior high,
Yeah.
Well, let's see.
you know.
Luther, what year did you come?
I came out here in the fall of 1969 from Detroit.
69, okay. And when did you guys move here?
I moved here when I was 10, 1960, and
Yeah, 1960.
And you were born here in 1951?
41.
Okay,
He
Gary.
put you in that silent generation we was talking about.
I need a ride home. I need a ride home. Get back in there. I need a ride home.
Anyway, yeah. So you were well, I guess a native of this area, and
Yes.
and
The central area.
and there's a few things that you remembered that we hadn't got here yet. You know,
Yeah.
growing up, you know, because I remember we were talking about certain things, but now we were just discussing how things have changed. A lot of the things that when we were younger are no longer there. And
In a lot of different ways. Physically, financially,
Yes.
economically, geographically. And that word,
it's
that umbrella is
that,
called
yeah, the bubble, it's all under that one bubble of
gentrification.
gentrification.
Well, you know, we're sitting right here in Renton, and
A suburb
I-
of Seattle.
I say 35, 40 years ago, when we first got out of high school, I had a job selling encyclopedias, and I sold them right down the street here.
Mhm.
And you know what was here? Woods. This whole area is nothing but woods. The high school was there, which was brand new then, but it was all woods here, just crazy. And who'd have thought that years later, we sitting in a modern house in the same spot?
Oh, quick side note, encyclopedias are like Wikipedia in hardback, but you couldn't just change what was in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You,
That was a great. That was a great.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. I mean, and there was volumes of these
They're
things.
the hard copy,
And
the
people
hard,
would,
you know,
would
right.
have them in their homes,
Yes.
prominently
There was-
displayed.
There'd be like
we had,
26
at
volumes
least
we had
26,
world-
yeah.
and a world atlas and all of that stuff.
Now, one thing hasn't changed. I was a lousy salesman then, and I never got any better because I never sold any of those encyclopedias. I was just out trying to sell them.
was
Hey,
a niche.
trying to keep that revenue flow. I hear
Sonny,
you.
so was that your first job after high school?
Pretty much. I mean, and I got tricked into it. You know what I mean? I read an ad in the paper, and it seemed like it'd be a good job because they was promising travel,
Yes.
you know, and
Get on your own 2 feet. Get on the good foot.
so little I knew the travel was to go 10 miles outside of Seattle. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
But,
But I thought it was gonna be something different.
Yes.
How old
So
were you?
I was like 19.
Graduated from high school, man.
Yeah.
At 19, you were still selling encyclopedias.
No, he
I started
You started.
to,
Right.
yeah. I mean, remember they had those folks, I mean, they had you going selling magazines and
Right.
encyclopedias.
I did that.
They're the same people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that door-to-door salesman hustle has been around forever.
Yeah, I mean, it was
And
nothing.
then Amway
But
came along.
I didn't know anything about that. I mean, I was, when I say I was fooled, if I'd have known that's what it was gonna be, I'd have never went. But I got there and I felt obligated to at least try.
Oh, yeah.
But
We all have
but it also
yeah.
created another experience that made you who you are.
True that.
You know?
True
I had the
that.
same story, but with the Franklin football team.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I'm with it. They tricked me in thinking they were jocks and buff and we were good. I went to one practice. They were not. And I was like, you know, my better judgment says music is the way to go. And I get paid to do music today. So you know what I'm saying? The experience. You got to know what you're not good at.
Yeah, and I never got play football, dang it.
Yeah, well.
What's interesting about what we led off with, I'm native Seattle, Louisiana,
New Orleans.
North Carolina.
North Carolina, Detroit.
You got a problem with that?
No, I love it. I need to ride home. No,
No, I do have a problem with it because it's like
We can go outside.
the way he said it. Washington, Louisiana, North Carolina, Detroit.
Oh, you did give him a city, not a state.
That's true.
That's true.
We're all here.
So he's,
Right.
What I'm saying, we're here.
Thank
We're in a
God.
little
Yes.
dusty ass Seattle.
yes.
We're here and we stayed.
Yes.
First of all, let me talk about the city. The city ain't dusty.
Oh,
All right, you know, just saying.
Here's another native, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Yes.
He's our producer and director and, well, cameraman, camera person, you know,
Yeah.
because like it's way too advanced for us to use. So, anyway,
I have a question. It's,
back to.
hopefully this is engaging enough for us. So when I got here, it was after high school. I was a year after I graduated from high school. Didn't know I was coming this year, but I did. And I was speaking earlier about we were talking about gentrification and how
things
busing.
have changed.
students were bused from one geographic area to another area, you know. And this voluntary busing that I heard about here, that was foreign to me because folks wasn't trying to go out of their way to get bused from one side of town to the other side of town to sit next to Sally or Sue,
Right.
thinking that sitting next to them was going to make you smarter, and parents and whatnot were all in on that. And I'm used to hearing stories about in the city of Boston where the white parents said, "No, we're not busing our kids. No place. We don't want this busing thing. We don't want them
Right.
bused into our school. We will burn up the school buses," and they did.
Yes.
And here it was volunteer. It's like, wow, geez, this is amazing.
It was.
So
It
that was
wasn't
foreign to me.
actually-
So you guys, you know, from being 10 years old and getting through high school, and when did this busing thing start for you guys? Was it the
well,
ninth
well,
grade?
for-
or-
It wasn't
first
really,
of all,
it wasn't
I
really
wasn't-
voluntary.
I wasn't,
Were you bused? Was any of you bused?
No.
I came here.
I
from-
was bused.
I
took
took,
the bus.
I
but,
came,
That's because we moved
I
out
came
here.
from a segregated system,
Okay.
okay? So I didn't really understand any of that.
Mhm.
I was like in grades 1 through 3. And I knew that I was in a school with other Negroes, but I didn't know about any kind of busing or anything.
Right. 'Cause
So
we lived by
busing-
schools.
integration of the schools where I'm from, where I'm originally from, didn't occur for a number of other years. But an interesting thing is, in my class, if I'd have been in that town when they made those two schools one school, in my class was Roy Williams, who was the basketball coach at Kansas and at North Carolina for a while. Kate Jackson from Charlie's Angels. They were all in that class, that one class, integrated class. But it wasn't anything voluntary about it. That was a Seattle thing that they started because
Right. And the thing about that is, the reason it was voluntary is because
they try to be liberals.
It's because, like where you were talking about, you got one white high school and one black high school, okay? In Seattle, there was more schools, but there was only 2 that were even close to being diverse. Okay, most of the schools were predominantly
Right.
white. So, maybe, allegedly, supposedly, there was government money involved. If we didn't have any kind of integration, they was gonna lose federal money. So they said, okay, we're gonna take these people from the inner city, and that's where most of the diversity was. And in order for us to do that, we're gonna have to have people willing to go to other schools in other places. So what they did is they started having what they call magnet schools. So that if you know, that's what that ended up as. In other words, we're this school here, if you wanna be in liberal arts, you go to this school. If you want to be in science, you go to this school. If you want to be in math, you go to that school. So that's how they kind of justified it, I guess, because there was no, there was no. It's like when I was a kid in New Orleans, totally segregated, but we had schools in the areas we lived in. The only time we were bused is because they were building another school near where we lived, so we still had to go to the one that was there.
Gotcha.
So it was voluntary in a sense that they had to make it viable,
Bingo.
you know. And
Unfortunately,
people,
Unfortunately, what he's saying is partially true because really the only people that they forced to move were the blacks. Because if I'm going to this school here, this is in my neighborhood, it's right across the street, they gonna tell me I gotta go across town.
Right.
I got to.
Mhm.
But what if I want to deal with this magnet stuff that's in my school across the street from me? I can't do it because I ain't white.
Well,
Well, actually, you could.
Seattle has a dark history.
Yeah, I know.
And they don't call it segregation, but it did happen, where it was illegal for you to sell your house in certain neighborhoods to certain groups of people.
Right.
Blacks,
Right.
Native Americans. I don't know where Asians fall into that
But
category,
I'm sure there's some
but
headlines,
you couldn't
covenants.
sell your house to them. It was against the law. So now you always follow the what in America? The money.
The money.
They needed the money, so oh shit. We've got to mix this up. And they
Right.
didn't. Nobody wanted, especially us. We didn't want that. We were happy in our neighborhood schools. We knew the
Showed
teachers.
up. We
They
knew.
had books on the shelves. We were getting somewhat of an education. And to your point of gentrification, it was segregated Seattle, but they didn't call it segregation.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that term gentrification had showed up at that time.
Exactly.
But let's face it, that's what
That's
it
what it
was.
was. And that's the whole thing. There's been redlining in a lot of different cities
Exactly.
in America
Right.
that people are not aware of.
Bingo. And for the young people who don't know what redlining is, it's a if you can imagine a map of your city, and certain areas are designated by banks and lending institutions as poor investments and poor lending opportunities for the residents there.
Right.
The word ghetto really means a forced area you're forced to live in. It doesn't necessarily mean black or whatnot, it's just we're gonna force you to live there. Another word that to help support and enforce this redlining or this forced segregation of people and their resources is covenants. When I got here, I remember, it was a Laurelhurst. That was this versus that. You know, there was Broadmoor. You know, you couldn't move there. You couldn't buy property there.
Windermere.
You know, all that stuff. And so covenants were written in. You're not going to sell to blacks. You're not going to sell to Chinese or stuff like that. So those are ways and methods to enforce this segregation that didn't want to talk about, but it's in the covenants. And so when you got a realtor to show you properties, they would only show you properties where you could most likely get a loan to do that, because the places that you might like this house over here. Nah. let me show
They
you.
literally had maps
Yes, sir.
of the city
Yep.
and the areas outlined in red, therefore the term redlining.
Exactly.
And they had, they since then declassified them, I guess, but they had it in the paper or in something, some article, and right there said, here's a little area right here, and this is the border of this area. And if you wanted to buy property in Seattle as a black family, you had to do it within that area, that red line.
Exactly.
Those red lines. You know, it's like it was so rare that you would see people of color outside of that area.
Exactly.
And Chinatown is in that area. So a lot of the Chinese, Asian people, we were all people of color in that little red line area. And you could, it was like you said, it was against the law to even show people.
I wanted to transfer
Property out there.
not transfer,
You know?
to move to a point where I grew up in Detroit, right? Detroit, the east side or west side, right? And there's plenty of, at that time, plenty of ghetto areas there. People were locked into. So the only people who were selling to blacks were Jews. And so I remember my dad bought a house in, on West Grand Avenue and West Side. You know, you could tell it was, I could tell, that there was, the Jewish people lived there. I mean, the way they designed, the tile floors were six-sided tiles, doorknobs were glass and just like that and whatnot. But it's interesting because blacks didn't have the opportunity to build their own neighborhoods first. So we were always going behind another group of people who had the homes, who had the houses, and typically it was the Jews. At the last minute, they let one or two in, and that's how they came. There's a thing I wanted to ask about is this busing, right? We went through a civil rights era where we were marching in the streets and demanding open housing, equal access. And it's interesting, if you live next to a school, you're paying taxes, you know, and if your school doesn't have the resources that another part of town has, predominantly white, you say, well, let's move our children over there to sit next to us. Interesting. Why not bust the money? It's a lot cheaper to bust the money than it is to have schools, have buses can afford. Then why not have equal access, equal amounts of resources go to the schools?
Because they could do it their way and they could still control the money.
Yeah. It still gets back to
They had
who
the
wants to be in
leverage.
control.
They had the leverage, they had the money, and they could use the money to keep us out. And they did a fine job.
Bust the money.
But as you were saying, what you brought up, Central Seattle, right in the red line, there's a lot of Jewish influence there.
Yeah.
You go around and look at some of their churches,
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
right? And Langston Hughes
Yeah, that's a good
was
front
a
end.
synagogue,
Yeah.
okay? And so that trend was there. So when, they were the only ones that would sell
Yes.
to people of color.
Same thing in Detroit.
Yeah,
Probably in other areas too.
so the whole thing is, that eventually went away once it got exposed. And that was during the civil rights era, and then they decided, oh, well, you
So
guys
what
can,
has been some benefits of gentrification? Are there any benefits of gentrification of folks with greater incomes coming into the neighborhood and displacing blacks?
the people who were there owning the property benefited, but the thing is, they were not gonna get what they own, what they have somewhere else for the price that they paid.
What were the benefits?
They, financial.
When they sell the property?
Yeah. It's like, you go through Seattle, Kingway and 23rd, all in there, those were $10,000 houses.
So we're finding out now, though, that that's not necessarily an advantage to sell.
No, it's not, it's not an
Whatever they sold for
advantage.
then,
It's not
peanuts now.
It's not an advantage, but it's the only positive that comes out of that. And it's not for you, it's for them.
Yeah.
So in the long run,
But
it's really
you
not
bought, you bought the house for 5 figures. You sell it now for 6, sometimes 7. Okay, figures.
And you've diminished your community
And
because the
there's-
institutions that were
Exactly.
there and around,
Sure, and then
they're gone too, or
it's-
you don't come
it's-
back.
it's
I
like, I
belong
don't
to a church where they
yeah.
say more than, this was in the year 2018, I think. They said that more than 51% of the members live outside of the city of Seattle.
exactly,
We're talking about First AME Church, right?
exactly. Mount Zion.
So I'm sure other churches got the same situation. And so
Well, sure.
you sell and you move out of the community and
Right.
you know the community where you're at. It's
Yeah, but it's not like, so you sold out, you moved out. It's not like that. It's like you couldn't get a loan to remodel your house.
Right.
You couldn't,
Yes.
you wanted to stay where you knew your neighbor,
Come
you
on,
knew the
let's
people
tell
down,
the truth now.
you know the children.
Yeah,
You couldn't get the loan at a reasonable interest rate to remodel your house. But you were encouraged to move out to Renton,
Right.
move out to Kent.
Move out to Kent.
Right? You can get it cheaper. To your point, the cost of the house, you can get a lot more, but you've broken up, by design, you've broken up the core of the black community. It never was a big black community any damn way in Seattle.
But there was
But they
a
were
lot of
all
cohesiveness in this.
but
I mean,
they
I
were-
came from
they were
Detroit,
all
a lot of
kind-
cohesiveness. When I came
Well,
here,
okay, so
They're all concentrated.
So
in one area.
you're talking, well, you've broken up this and that, but what about those blacks who said, I don't want to be stuck here in this area here.
Sure.
I'm gonna go out here because it's nicer and I get something brand new I get more bang for my buck. What about those folks?
Okay, when you say nicer to me, what does nicer mean? Nicer means I have the means and the money to keep it up and make it nicer. So if you can't, where you were born and raised on whatever street, Jefferson, Washington, whatever street you were born and raised on,
26
27th
South.
and Pine, if you can't improve your property, it's not like you're trifling or lazy. You want to have something that looks just as good as when you drive in other neighborhoods and you see, you admire them.
Yes.
You want to have that, but you can't get the funds to keep it up. So, I mean, what are you supposed to do?
No, but there's people that just wanted to not live in the CD, period.
Exactly.
Okay?
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I thought
Okay,
was the point. It's like, hey, I was born here, I was raised here, I went to this school, I went to that school, I want to experience something different. Plus, I can get more bang for my buck out there than I can. I could get like a half acre of property put, and there's a nice house on it, whatever. Some people wanted that, so they willingly said, hey, this property is for sale. But the trend happened where all of a sudden folks realized, oh, it's only 10 minutes from downtown. Oh, the business district, that's what, so now that property's more valuable. Oh, we're getting light rail going through there. And then you get all the eco benefits. Well, I can ride my bike down to work, or the bus stop's right by my house, and I can get on and get off right by my office, or my business, or whatever I got going on downtown. That's when that property, right? Bellevue, another suburb across the lake, for you people that are not familiar with our area, was just basically a bedroom community because, they called it white flight. They didn't want to be in the inner city.
And they had the means to move.
And they had the means, it was basically a bedroom community. People lived over there and they worked over here, right? Then all of a sudden, more ecology, gas, fossil fuels. Price of gas went up. It's not as economical to drive across that bridge to go over there. So Bellevue started growing. But the whole thing is, originally, it was to get away from us. That's why they called it white flight.
Well, I want to bring us back to
Gentrification.
the word,
because
the word community.
Huh?
Gentrification and community.
Right.
Because there's a sacrifice to maintain the community, right?
Gentrification
You got-
changes a community.
That's true. That's true. It has changed.
Not necessarily for the better.
Right.
Right.
It's a challenge there. It's a challenge to hang on to your property. It's a challenge to offer your property and to your
Well, there's a legacy.
the kids after.
Yeah, there's a legacy.
And so
Yeah.
a lot of kids, I don't want this house. I don't want to live here.
Right.
And it's like, man, it's like, as old folks said, didn't we show you by example that community was good? You know,
Right.
the schools and where we worked and whatnot. However, if you were not, we talk about different businesses. This used to be here, that used to be here.
Right.
But if you didn't own the property, if you didn't own the building,
But the
the
problem
building could
is,
be gone.
if your offspring don't want to do what you did to create that business,
Uh-huh.
then what are you going to do? They're going to sell it. Hopefully they can sell it to someone else in the community and put another business in that space. That wasn't always an option.
That's a tough one.
You know,
right
but
on
you had a
that,
lot
man,
of
you know,
people,
it's like-
when we were kids, there was a lot of folks that we interacted with
Yes.
at school that did not want to live where they live. They want to get the hell out. They want to explore. They want to, some of them joined the military, right? just get me the hell out of here. So that sense of community, you know, wasn't as strong as it had been as we were growing up. The difference being, we had more. We had more opportunities than our parents and our grandparents. Okay? A lot of them were stuck there because they felt comfortable there. They had a support group. They was a village.
That's a community.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Well, then comes the next generation.
And they don't appreciate those advantages. They don't appreciate that structure that's
They're
built.
not wired. They weren't wired that way. Everybody's not wired. It's like just like me. Okay. I like Seattle. I like living here. I like growing up here because having been from another place and then watching other major cities and the troubles they were having.
Come on.
This was
Better.
way up there in the
Better.
corner, and I had opportunities. You know, I could get an education. I didn't have to steal it as much as he did in other places I've been.
And you know what? I think that it's just a change. You know, generationally, it's just a priority
Sure.
change. A lot of it is.
Sure.
You look at the dynamics of what were held in high regard, maybe when you guys were kids versus what now. Marriage, a lot of people don't want to get married. That used to be a thing. I want to get married and have my family. A lot of people
raise my kids here. Exactly.
don't want to do it. I know when I moved to DC when I was 19 and started a whole thing there, I was there for a couple of years and I loved it. I was like, you know, only reason I came back was because of a death and I ended up staying. But, you know, that thought of you have a foundation set up that you can integrate yourself in and take over and make your life, be like, yeah, but I've experienced something outside of that bubble. I think in today's generation, again, with social media and with travel and money being accessible to go and do things, people's priorities, especially about where they're planted at, I think have changed. You know, I still think there are definitely those people who want the houses. I want a house. My family, my mom's side, we owned a bunch of lots in the Central. They sold them all. I wasn't happy, you know, but I didn't own it. It wasn't, you know, I didn't have no say in that. But I just think it's a priority shift throughout the years.
And it changed.
And the thing that I keep sitting there thinking is, when we moved here, although I was young, I have never, ever recovered that sense of community and belonging that I had back in North Carolina here, because it's so disjointed here. Now, can try to recreate it and this and that, but it's still too disjointed because I think we've become too much like the slave owner. Come on. I mean, that's how I feel. We've become
I
too
think
much
there's a
like...
term for that, and that's called assimilation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why I could never get that, because it was never here. It was never here. We didn't bring it with us. It was there. We came here, we had to get with the program.
You know, CJ,
Yeah.
To hear you speak about what the differences in the generations, I love history. I love respecting history. Right? I love recounting dates and different individuals made sacrifices for the better of a bigger
Right.
community, folks.
Very
whatnot.
good.
And it seems as though that from, I'm going to say our generation, when we were old enough to own homes, that we saw folks who bought their house in the central area, whatever, for $25,000 and then offered 80,000.
Mhm.
Look at the math, hey, I'm up out of here.
Certainly.
So what happened to the history, the respect of the sacrifices made by those beforehand? He said, well, I'm gonna do this here and do something and go on over there, and community gets dissolved.
But you still have some of the older folks, like our parents' generation, that are really getting up in age.
Yeah.
And they've had that property since, you know, shit, the 50s, 40s.
But a community is
Okay.
more than just
But
that property
only,
they own.
wait, but that's only one person or one family
Yeah.
Yeah.
in that generation that's still holding that together.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he's been offered,
Mm-hmm.
he has like a double lot deep in
Yeah,
there,
right.
and he's hanging on to it.
Mhm.
But the thing is, what's gonna happen when the kids get it?
Right. Some
Okay,
bingo.
okay.
One of them kids got to have a vision bigger than.
But,
Right, but everybody
that's
has a
only,
vision
that's
to-
only one out of
Because I tell you what,
many.
remember that spot over in Seattle that I used to live in, my parents had?
Yeah,
They bought that spot, corner lot,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
for $19,000 in
Exactly.
South Seattle,
Mhm.
okay? Now, my mom was always pushing. She was very progressive in that matter. She's like, we need to do better, you know? And so she wanted another house. So they came out and they were building this one. It wasn't here. They were just starting to build it. This is what I want. So they sold that house, used the money from that, which they got that house because the money from the cab company in North Carolina that my grandfather started with the property that was part of that purchase. So that community stuff came up here. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, in fact, that kind of supports what you said earlier about what about the families
Yeah.
that move out, not because they couldn't get financing or they were self-supported.
Yeah.
They understood the value of
Of
owning
pro-
property.
Right.
So that's a good example, but that's not the widespread
Oh, I
example.
understand- I
That's a
understand.
good example
I
of why
understand
somebody
that.
moves out.
That's it, that's
You
the
know.
exception rather to the rule.
Yeah, so that's a
the
good
rule.
example.
But there's a lot of people that I know that have sold their property and moved out and bought something in the suburbs. You know, and another thing that's different in generations is the ability to generate revenue. We had more opportunities to make money than our parents and our grandparents. We had, because just looking at the generations, they didn't have the civil rights and the things that we had. They didn't have the government funded programs, EOP and all of these things that we had. And our parents had a little more of that than our grandparents. So that adds into it too, because you have more opportunity to move freer in the society than they did. And so you can't, you know, that sense of community is just like we were talking last week or week before about the pharmacies, the black-owned pharmacies. Well, their kids not necessarily don't want to go into that. So, okay, you have a pharmacy, nobody wants it, nobody, you know what I'm saying? That legacy's not going to carry on in that manner. So the property they had there, but the property that their business was on, development, redevelopment. You know, you had black doctors, dentists, all these families here with businesses and what have you, but if the kids don't want to carry that on, it's going to go by the wayside like it has.
So how do you protect a legacy? I think that's kind of,
That's where we're going to, that's where we're getting to.
you know,
It's
how do you
difficult.
protect the legacy?
It's difficult because there's so much more. Each generation has so much more stuff than the generation before, because science and technology is just running. You know, we never had cell phones when we were kids.
Yeah,
You know, my grandson got one.
yeah.
You know, and he was born here, and he's now living in Richmond, getting ready to go into high school.
Excuse me.
You
So your
know,
question was, how do you protect
but
the
how?
legacy?
Yeah,
Yeah, how do you protect, because we can't say the kids were wrong for feeling the way they felt, and we can't say the older generation was wrong for trying to protect the legacy. How do we get a conversation where the kids will say, okay, Pops, Mom, sit down, this is how I feel about the way things are going in my life, understand me, and then how do you get the legacy?
This was always
How
handed
do,
down to me.
how do I get you to understand my legacy? I mean, how do we get that conversation?
Okay, so you're looking at it from my viewpoint wrong. You are the legacy. You are the legacy.
Okay.
And
But
so
that's
the
it,
con-
you're the
so-
legacy.
so the
But
conversation should be what then?
The conversation should be, you are the legacy.
And
You are my legacy.
uh-huh.
In the conversation.
Wait, no. I don't think you addressed at all what they were. How do we? It seems to me the question was, how do we, pass down the legacy, as in what I've started, this particular project or something. You keep going. You saying you're my legacy. That's it. No, we're talking about the project. Keep going,
Right.
not just the thought. How do you get your concept to keep living?
Exactly. One of the things about the
I'm sorry. I was hearing. I was like, I'm just
is,
addressed it.
It sounds like what you were saying is like a business. Not everything is a business. I mean,
Right.
folks go to work for other people and
Right.
make investments other than start businesses. However, most of the vast majority, I'd say 95% of black businesses still to this day are sole proprietors. So we are not employing each other.
Right.
We're not growing enough
Exactly.
to employ each other. And for some reason, that's not part of the business plan, is to expand so we can hire more folks that look like us to support families and
Franchise
whatnot.
or anything.
And so family and legacy, I believe, are together. We got here by not having a bunch of stuff. Came over as free people and they enslaved us and whatnot.
Right.
I saw something on, I guess it was YouTube or whatever, and they asked this old dude about reparations. And he said, it's about land. Give me some land so we can do our own thing. Land is a legacy that we don't have. Well, I own this land, so I sold it so I can go over here, but it's not expanding. They're not making no more land.
No.
It's almost like if you got some land, you hang on to it. And yes, it's tough. It's tough. If you have some land and before you go or whatnot, you say, okay, I'm gonna pass this on to my next generation. And they don't see the value of it, or they don't see,
Exactly.
you don't have to, because I got a pharmacy or because I got a cleaners, and you don't have to necessarily go into that business. But if you hang on to the land, you can always do something different. Let me tell you a short story. There's a guy named Earl Debman. You know Earl Debman?
Yeah, I heard that.
Artist?
I think. Yes, I heard that name.
Anyway, he owned some property on, I want to say 20th and Union. And I was a housing and zoning inspector at the time, right? So it was a zoning complaint that this building that he owned, it had some little offices in it. Then it had on the side, it used to be a auto garage, right? So you got the wood timbers and big spaces and whatnot. And you found out, I said, this guy is, and so he's leased it out to some other brother or whatever to do auto repair. Well, you're doing auto repair, you've got storage of oxygen, acetylene, stuff like that. And you don't have it fire protected from the office space, right? But this brother owns the property. So he gets this complaint. I come out there looking like whatever. Hey man, you got so and so and so and so. And I got to explain to him why there's a, there has to be this, in order for these two uses to coexist in this building that you own, there has to be a 4-hour separation.
Right.
Oh man, so wait man, this, that, yeah. First of all, brother, you own the property. We're just talking about uses and safe uses. I didn't even ask you about insurance because if there's a fire or something, man, you're going to be out in the cold. That's what's going to happen. Oh man, so you just want me to sell to these white folks, these different gendered folks to do whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I say, well, if you own the building, what do you care? You lease it out to them, and every time you get tired of thinking about it and whatnot, you could up their rent. Because you own the building. You control what uses happen there. The brother doesn't own the building anymore. He's gone, and there is a optional lifestyle persons that do what they do there. But you have some property, some land, and you can decide what to do with it. Whether it's one story, and you decide at some point, you know what? I'm going to put 5 plus 1 retail at the bottom and condos or whatever up above to help generate wealth. And that's the thing I'm trying to get to, is that the next generation, what you do with that business, property, whatever, is figure out a way to have some business or whatever that generates some wealth. Right. So you can sit back. You don't have to be there every day minding the store.
But what if you can't afford to keep that property?
That's a challenge.
Because property appreciates.
Bingo.
Okay?
And the old people get taxed out of the property they have.
I say property taxes is real.
Property
And
taxes.
then I think the not to undermine again when you talk about like a family business that's gone for generations, that's a clear, it's clear that at least someone in the following generations, at least one person had a business mindset.
Yes.
And but see, I see a problem coming is, what if that shit skips generations? You have a brilliant business person and they built this thing, but what if not being funny, what if their kids are dumb as rocks? Or they don't want to do, I do not want to be a businessman. That ain't what I want. I think that is something, I don't necessarily know if that's something to be fixed. I think that's just human nature. People evolve and do their own thing, but I do think that's something that's lacking when I look at generational wealth. Well, the people that seemingly have successfully pulled it off, they've had at least 1 or 2 strong business-minded people in each generation to keep it going. And also a lot of that stuff was started with illegal money too. But that's
there's that.
But that's how some of us got through college. But anyway,
No, you were saying.
you were saying?
No, you said, but anyway, so I was waiting.
Oh no, that was back to you, G.
So, to your point, the gentleman you were talking to with the business, because I live on 21st off next to the McMillan's with big dump trucks.
Sure.
So, I'll talk about that later. But how would that conversation could have gone with his offsprings to hang on to the property, even if you don't want to do this? This is, how do you sell that to the offspring? This is what's important.
You say money. You say money. Money is transactional and it's transitional.
Right.
Money was important back then. It's important now. And so that kind of conversation, that's you got one generation that I want to do this thing, so and so and so and so. It had nothing to do with that. I respect you, old man, or whatever, blah blah blah. But I want to do so and so and so and so. So not all of us are teachers, but we have a task. If we bring children into the world, we got to be able to communicate to them. We watch them grow up, so we know how to communicate to them, right? We know what works and what doesn't. So you have that conversation about money to them in terms of, you may not want to have a pharmacy, a business, whatever at this and so and so, but this land is here.
Yes, you can use
It's here. You can
change.
What are some of your ideas for? You
That's
may
a good
want to go
question.
do so this, that, so and so, so. But if you got this working for you, you don't have to do that. You can walk and chew gum at the same time.
That's a great question.
Just because it's a one-story, whatever, blah, 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 it looks like yada, 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 how about you build up to a 6-story? And so I'm gonna answer this one question earlier that you mentioned about, you can't get the money to make these improvements and whatnot. As a community, as a black community, I believe we have failed. How have we failed? Well, our institutions, one, churches, Sunday, they pass that plate, collect that money, and on Monday they take that money to the white banks.
Sure.
And they complain they can't get no loans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've heard me say it before. Ain't nothing stopping us from starting our own credit unions. Oh, we had this and we had, I ain't talking about had. I'm talking about keeping.
We never,
Generational worth means it goes on. Just because you're some bad actors is one time, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, well, Dad, I'm gonna go back and get the white man's ice. Now, you just start up again. Fraternities, professional organizations, churches and whatnot can establish credit unions, not bank, credit unions. And you can put, what can you put in your credit union? You can put in your retirement. You can put in your Social Security. You have an option of where you want that money to go to.
everything.
That's money coming in. Financial institutions only make money when they're able to lend money. They can't lend money if they don't have money coming in.
Yeah.
So that's how we can hang on to our community. That's one way. When you got money, then you got a black business that can go and someplace to borrow and get a much better conversation than with Wells Fargo or Bank of America.
Certainly.
And we're not talking about legislative. You don't have to legislate shit.
Right.
Nope.
You got to wait for somebody to go in office and hope he comes back with a good
Church
deal.
had one.
And they can still have one.
Yeah, Mount Zion had a.
And they should
credit
bring it
union.
back
I
again.
don't know if it's still around, but
NAACP had one. I
Central
financed my
area
Volkswagen.
had
but back to the businesses.
Yes.
As far as expanding,
Mhm.
they gotta have support. So if ain't nobody in the community supporting that business, or if that's only people that's doing it, it makes it difficult to expand or to, you know.
So that has to be taught to us again.
So
Taught to
we
the
got
next
to-
generation.
So
Let-
we have to support our businesses
I agree, definitely.
in order for them
Definitely.
to
Expand.
serve us better. And, you know, like, okay, well, there's this one over here, and then, oh, on that part over there, they've started another, you know, I mean, they've got another, not a franchise, but I mean, they've got a second location.
We have those choices to either
Yeah, but
purchase
if nobody's,
and
if
support.
nobody's supporting them in either location,
But it can be done, though, right?
there's no,
It can be
there's no revenue. Oh, it can be
It's,
done.
it's a
It
matter of
has
teaching.
been
It's a
done.
matter of teaching each other and the younger generations. That
Well, let me ask this: what businesses are still black businesses in Seattle still thriving today that were around? I won't even go to when you guys were kids. Let's go to when I was a kid, around in the 80s. Is there any black businesses in Seattle that was around in the 80s that are still there today?
KRIC.
Ezell's.
D. Charlene.
Is G. Charlene still in?
Yeah,
I
she's
know
still-
she passed away, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
her.
Last time I checked, it was
Yeah.
still
Okay.
Miss
But
Mary selling flowers.
Ezell's
Yeah.
is one of the few.
See, okay, actually, I want to break these down now because okay, first you said KRIZ. That's a radio station, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna give. I don't know this,
Oh.
but I mean it's a radio station, so I feel like they got their own lane. That's not necessarily a
And
public
also-
supported. I gotta go
Yeah.
into your store business. It's on the radio, so
Wasn't there 3 of them?
but people have to put ads into. They
This
have
is
radio and media as well.
Yeah.
yo, this is no.
Same
So,
with
so
the
I'm
media
saying that's a
thing.
good.
Okay.
But as far as being brick and mortar and somebody like spending their time going, I think get a little bit of a pass. But
Yeah.
to go to Ezell's, and let's think about Ezell's. You got the one in the central. Well, it's a franchise now.
Sure.
Ezell don't own Ezell's though.
No, Ezell's ex-wife and cousins owned it.
They sold that. I thought.
No, they still owned it. They got 17
Oh, yeah.
locations.
Okay, they still own it. Okay,
Lewis
okay.
Brothers.
But that family, that original family, Ezell himself has 2 locations of Heaven Sent.
No, they closed. Heaven
It-
Sent's not there. Or at least the one downtown Renton.
No,
No,
there's one in the
no.
I was about to say.
there's one in the 145th
So
I don't know.
Yeah.
and Lake City Way, and the other one is in Renton,
Everett.
Everett.
Oh, he way out.
Okay, You also have the Fax newspaper. You also have the Medium
The
newspaper,
medium is Chris.
which is Chris.
And he owns that
and then he had those. Isn't there 3 stations? KZIZ, KRIZ,
right,
K
right.
something else.
Yeah, but they're the same.
But they're the same. But anyway, those are a few of the ones that are still around since.
So my question in asking that is we talked about we have to patronize and you know, in order to keep black businesses around, they have to be
Yeah.
patronized.
Sure.
And so, and you're saying we have to learn that. I wanted to point out on the camera, like, okay, what are the ones that are there that have a track record of being supported, and how can we go off of that? Unfortunately, Ezel's is just good chicken, so that's pretty easy.
Copy.
Yeah, but the whole thing is though, there's 17
And
of
then
them.
what's the
David
name of the
Jones.
cleaners up on
Gorilla.
Madison?
He, you talking about Spates?
Yeah.
Spates is he owns the property still.
He
And
still owns the
and
property.
no, he has not sold the property. He's leasing that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He was one, and it's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know where it always been, and everything around it has been changing. Well, most things. There's still
Yeah.
some things
That was a
are.
very smart man. I got a
But
chance
yeah,
to talk to
he's-
Brother Spates, man. And
Yeah,
he was,
but he's,
the one that reinforced that thing about they ain't making no more land.
Right.
Sure.
So you hang on to the land. So his offspring, they didn't want to continue the cleaners, but he held on to the land and he leased it to folks.
Sure. And, I mean that's the whole thing. It's like when you have land, you have to figure out a way to keep it and to make it profitable if you had a business there.
All right, so here's a question. Now, let's take that example. Man has land, right? But you know, family don't want to do so. He's gonna keep it, but he's gonna lease it out. Now, say he leases that to whatever business, not black business, just whoever's
Right.
paying.
Yeah.
Boom.
Right.
Is he contributing to gentrifying that area and keeping himself good, or is he contributing to keeping black business alive, even though the business kind of just goes to his pocket, not necessarily to the community?
I say yes and no, because when you lease it, just like that example with Earl Devlin, it's a free market thing. Whoever wants to pay the most, they can use it.
Yeah.
If I own some land and I don't have a particular favoritism for LGBTQ folks, but if they're paying, it's green.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, just like the folks who
And
run
that, to
open
me, that's not a
lights.
hard conversation to convince the next generation.
Right.
It's about
But
it's about
as long
money
as
coming in.
it's generating some kind of revenue,
Yes.
they can afford to
But-
keep it.
Exactly.
But my question now, look at the Central and
Right.
Uncle Ike's. It looks nice.
Hey,
They got the money to pay for it. They bought up the whole block, and now it's
It's
a
a
very now. Then you add in the
It's a
high rise and all
yeah.
this, and now this is not the Central. This is a very gentrified space, but it was
sure.
open market.
for sure.
Now is that is that helping or hurting the community?
I think it's helping because there's a was it New Africa or Africa Town,
Africa Town, yeah.
which is a corporation to to
New Africa Town.
New Africa Town to
Yeah.
hang on to different properties and to develop it. And they have the Liberty Bank property that's developed, and across the street where
Right,
some
but
other
who
stuff that's
owns
been
it?
developed. And it was I'm sorry.
Who owns it?
I don't know.
Can people of color
Yes,
afford to live there?
I don't know.
Because all of that stuff on
See,
Madison and 23rd or that
yeah.
area, you talk about moving south.
Seriously.
There's a lot of high rises where it used to be houses.
Right.
Where'd all them people get pushed to?
Right. And then
See, that's why I asked, does it help or hurt when you talk about open market? Yeah, a black man owns the property,
Sure.
but if he's not consciously like, I need black business in here so we can keep the community, he's just like, I own the property and I want my money.
Right.
White people, I don't care, move on and give me my check. And he
Right.
out the way. The
Right.
community now has taken a different face.
well, there's
Yeah, does it help or
there's
hurt?
one staple of the community who wasn't black.
Excuse me.
Y'all remember Welsh Hardware?
Yeah.
Okay, you know that building on the corner?
Yeah.
It's called Welsh Plaza.
Yep.
Okay.
They own They hang on to it.
You remember Jack Richardson?
Apparently so. That's what I'm saying. Apparently so, because they own from 22nd back up.
Yeah.
To 24th anyway.
No,
23rd.
23rd.
Gotcha.
Now, almost to
And
the
that
junior
was
high.
Welsh Hardware.
Oh, yeah, right.
There's parking
What was
lot.
the name of that
Yeah.
pharmacy that was there on the corner?
Where? On 23rd and
Union. The
Mayran.
Mayran.
There you go.
Yeah.
What was the name of the pharmacy that was in the Madison Plaza?
Madison Plaza.
Yeah, it's not. And then there was Jordan's Pharmacy, but Jordan's Pharmacy was a grocery store and a pharmacy. So now the store, the property's still there. It's still a store, but I believe it's African.
Where Jordan's was?
Yeah.
There's a fence around there, man. I think.
Well, now, but at first that store lasted for a long time.
Which is interesting. Now,
I
here's
don't
the
know.
thing. He
and I
owned
don't-
that land.
Yeah, but I don't know
I don't know what that is.
well, after the parents passed away, I don't know what the children did, whether they leased it or whether they sold it.
So CJ,
Yeah.
you had mentioned the black man that leases to whoever. First of all, if he didn't, he could get in trouble.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of like a no-brainer, right? And you get as much money as you can legally, right? This is America. He has that right. What does he do with that money? Does he send a check to the Ku Klux Klan every month? Okay, now I got a problem with him. But if he, with his discretionary money, we don't know, he might be contributing to, we always talk about credit unions, behind the scenes. That's his business.
Very well might be.
But own it first of all, and nobody can kick you off. Like we talk about LeBron James is rich. No, the white man that pays his salary is rich. So,
White man paid for salary.
Actually, I think at this point in his career, LeBron is wealthy.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
I was about to say, LeBron is past rich, I think.
No, what I was getting ready to say. That's past Rick.
think
Yeah, he's
LeBron,
past Rick.
LeBron is up
Billion.
now.
I'm telling you,
That's true.
he got his stuff together.
Yeah, he does. I mean, my brother did go to college. He got himself together.
So I mean, I would say this, and we're gonna have to soon.
Yeah.
But again, I what they do in the privacy with their money, who knows? Only they know, in their banker, and that ain't even what I'm. Again, I think just the thought of, with my experience, looking at the Central as I grew up, in the '90s. And then driving through today in 2024 and it having a completely different face. The root of my question was, with black folks owning the land, with them owning it, cool. But if they rent or lease or whatever to people that end up ultimately changing the face of the community, do you think that helps or hurts the gentrification topic?
It would help it because you're bringing in, basically, that area was predominantly black and black owned and black residential and the whole thing, because originally there was nowhere else for us to be. Okay, but as I said, the property values started skyrocketing because of the proximity to downtown.
Okay, that's
So, we're gonna hang on. So a lot of black people could not afford to keep that property. So developers came in and then they built buildings that the black people that were there can't afford to live in. So there goes the gentrification. And they'll say, well, we'll build this building over here and we'll call it low income housing. That's fine. But that one, and that one, those people can't even afford to get an apartment in. So the gentrification is going to be there because the community that was there is now fragmented.
okay. again, that didn't really go. My question was over here. You're over here. My question is strictly about the face of what it looks like. I get why people move. I'm not talking about why. I don't care about why. People have a whole bunch of reasons of why they gotta move. What I'm talking about is us as a black community saying we hate that our community is being gentrified. We get people moving for one specific reason. The one reason I'm talking about is we own the land. I'm a black person, I own this land. I don't really want to be here though, but I do want my money. So, come on, whoever folks, whatever race folks, give me my money so I can get out the way. That's the part I'm talking about. Is that part helpful to us liking or hating gentrification? That's what I'm talking about.
I think on the face of it, it adds to gentrification because when you drive
Yeah.
through and you look, that's what you're saying. You drive
It
through,
helps
look this, look that. But
gentrification.
I was gone to Memphis for 2 years. I came back and I didn't recognize different spots. Right? I knew it was happening that way because I've been it. So on the surface, it definitely doesn't help gentrification. The other part is so the folks that move to wherever. Renton, Auburn, Kent, Federal Way. But are they establishing a black community there? When I say establish, I'm talking about are they buying property? Are they creating institutions? Are they buying land? Are they employing one another?
Very few.
That's what I don't know, but I would say the same. I'm like
Very few.
you know, I don't know.
But it's probably just as much as in Seattle.
Oh, exactly.
Because
So is there
there aren't a lot of black businesses in Seattle, but guess what? I can count on one hand the number of black restaurants out here in this area. And that's not even counting these Arabs who have 2 franchises out here. So, I mean, and there are other black businesses that I wasn't aware of till I went in, but they're there. And the reason that they're here or out here is because they didn't get the support they needed
yes.
In the inner city.
in the inner city.
Hold on.
So who's causing gentrification?
That's really one of my biggest questions of a lot of things in this country. Wherever its genesis was, a lot of things in this country, we are just in a circle.
Yeah,
Like, how do you get out of this?
a loop.
You do this to get here, to get here, to get here, only to get back.
Back to that.
So when you talk about gentrification and people, you know, businesses coming in and buying things up and moving things out, moving people out, and then where do those people go, and then what do they do when they start? I'm looking for a way out of this circle. Okay, then people move and go here. What do? They just start over and then that's their life?
Yeah.
Or, you know, like, no, sorry.
I got it. I think I know where you get it. I don't believe there is going to be a black community, this land, this, I don't think that's going to happen. When we were marching for open housing, for the right, the freedom to buy and to live wherever,
Right.
we were adding to our gentrification, or at least our dissolution of our community. However, old as I am, I realize that you can still have institutions. They don't have to be brick and mortar.
Yeah.
Okay? You know, so you can have a credit union, professional organizations, churches and whatnot, put money in that allow us to borrow money to establish businesses, and we don't have to live in this specific area. But we can still be a community with our values and our cultures.
Yeah.
And still live all over the metropolitan Seattle area or metropolitan any other big city. So it doesn't have to be a brick and mortar situation for us to have
That's very true.
to have community.
Like we talked a couple episodes ago, you know, money is very fluid in this country. It moves very fast.
Concept.
So it's definitely something.
But check this out, one last thing before we get out. I went and attended I went to the Seattle Opera and saw X, the Malcolm, the
Yes.
retelling of the Malcolm X story.
What'd you think of that?
And that was, in the last 15, 20 years, that was the closest that I felt to being in a black community. Because that was opening night and it was, and all, I mean,
Check that out. Is it still there?
yeah, I don't know if it's done or not. but
Yeah, it might be
was-
closed
It
now.
was very good, but it was very, very informative. I went and seen his daughter spoke down in Renton High School
Yeah.
last week. Learned some very good things that are some misconceptions. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there.
So
And it's time for us to get the heck out of here.
Ooh,
So,
one hell of a
see y'all next week. Be cool, be good.
Hey, thanks for tuning in, and if you liked it, tell your friends, tell your relatives, subscribe, share,
Hit the like button.
and if you didn't, keep it to yourself.
Be well, stay safe, and stay hydrated. Try to get out and enjoy some sun. If you're in the PNW, try and get out and get some of that sun this week. If you're like me, you got a whole lot of grass that needs to be cut, but don't try to do it all at once.
I hope you enjoyed this session. There were some really good topics.
That's true.
That hopefully we answered, at least talked about and touched on that were interesting to you. Hit the like button and we'll see you next week for sure.
Peace.
Peace.
Or not.